Well, the good news is I survived. The surgery was pretty minor. Bad news is, I mean, I'm a little sore, but that's really it. We got the best case scenario here with everything. So, it all worked really well. The key is the mushy foods. Very heavy on the pasta, the soft pasta, mashed potatoes, soup, things like that. Possibly a lot of jello. Jello is very important. Can't emphasize that enough. Steve Weiner here from GetRubix.com, and we survived the dental extraction. But that's not the point of today. Point of today is we have a very good working version 7.2, the device migration beta. And what we really attacked is all the domain join issues people were having. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through it step by step. Instead of just running the solution, we're going to do it manually so we can see what's happening at each stage and hopefully make it easier for you to troubleshoot your own migration. No straws. Straws, if you get a tooth extracted and you drink with a straw, I mean, you're a goner if you use a straw. They pretty much tell you you'll be dead, essentially. That's the impression I got.
Get Rubix, solving for the modern workplace.
Okay, so let's take a look at what we did in 7.2. Actually, for that matter, I'm also going to talk about what we did in 7.1 because, that's not it. Because I also made some changes and I really didn't get to cover that much. So basically what we did in 7.1 is we added a big fix around the unjoining the domain and another fix for finding the users in the new tenant. We also added the option to change the wallpaper, just because when you move tenants, sometimes Intune doesn't kick in fast enough, and that seems to be a very visual change that folks asked for, so why not? We put it in, it seems to work. And then recently, yesterday, coming out of the grogginess of the dental work, I added in a timeout for a user loop, but I'll explain what that is. So I'm going to grab the solution, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the changes, and I'll show you. And then what we'll do is go through an actual device migration line by line. And that should kind of help show you what's going on. Let's open this with code. Okay, so I'm going to open up Start Migrate. And we are going to bounce around here. So we're going to look at this section, right? Which is basically all about getting the new user identity. Now, we added two things, and only one of them applies with domain join. So the first thing is we're kind of trying to determine if there's a new tenant or if this is just domain to cloud, in which case that would be just the source tenant. So either way, whichever tenant we have, we've established our new headers for this part. This really only applies to intra to intra. The full UPN, what we did here is we added some work to basically automatically look up the new user. So the problem we had, if you have John Smith at corp.com, right? That's your UPN. So we were searching, right, the Microsoft Graph for users. The filter is starts with, and we were looking at the user principal name, and we were actually looking at the, let's call it the short UPN, which is I did a split on John Smith and separated from the @corp. So this would now be the short UPN. So basically the idea here is if you are John Smith at corp.com and your new tenant is John Smith at company.net, it'll still find you because John Smith is the same. Some of the big feedback I got was, well, what if you have johnsmith.admin at company.net, John Smith test account at company.net? You can see both of these would come back as John Smith, so that would be problematic. So because of that, we can skip this automated part here. We don't even have to do that. In fact, it's not even applicable on a domain join machine. However, for those who like the convenience of it automatically filing, or is automatically finding the new user, I actually changed the split. So instead of getting rid of @corp, we're getting rid of corp. So that means the short UPN is now John Smith at. So if you have all three of these that come back, it's only going to grab something that starts with the at. So the .admin and the .test account won't come back. So it's a little cleaner. Definitely give it a shot, but that's what we did there to bring back the new user object if we can automatically find it. So moving on to this next part, what happens if we can't find it? If it's domain to entry, if it just totally is a mismatch, we need some way to get the new user ID. So of course the idea was to prompt the user. However, it became a little complicated. And the reason being is the way we can properly authenticate the user is by using the connect AZ account command from the AZ account module, but that has to run as a user. So what we're doing is we're installing the module, we're checking for NuGet, we're installing the accounts module as a system context. And then what we're doing is we are setting a task that runs immediately. And this task will run the user finder script. The user finder script is fairly simple. We import the module, set some parameters, and connect AZ account. This will prompt the user through a browser to sign in with their new credentials. After that, we get a token from that sign in, and we just do a lookup call on the me endpoint. So it's just that user's info. And from there, we get the same new user info that we would have parsed above if we were to ping the tenant, you see here, but we're getting it as the user. So how do we get it back to start migrate? Well, we make a JSON and we write it to a easily accessible file, public documents. Now, how does this know when we've completed it? So what we have is we have some timeout parameters. So once we schedule the task, we're allowing up to 5 minutes, and you can change this. This is the number of seconds. So we're allowing 5 minutes to happen. So basically within that 5 minutes, basically while the elapsed time is at 0 seconds, we are testing for that path. So the new user path is the one we expect to look for. So what happens is it's going to run, it's going to not find it, and it's going to keep checking every 5 seconds. And then of course, once it's there, it's going to break and stop. Otherwise it'll just keep sleeping every 5 seconds. And then once it finds it, we're just going to ingest that JSON the same way we do from any JSON file, build our object, and write it all to the registry. And of course, in the event that we can't find that, we're going to run an exit script because we don't have a new user and we can't migrate. Other change to mention before we go over everything else is we added the wallpaper feature I mentioned. The wallpaper is pretty simple. It happens during the reboot. Basically, if you want, you place your JPEG, has to be a JPEG file. You place that here in the device migration root. We actually don't need this autopilot theme, it turns out. We can get rid of that. I'll probably update that by the time you watch this. So you put a JPEG in there, and whatever the JPEG is, we grab it, and then we set it in the registry to be the desktop image path. Note that that's going to be the setting, so if that's not what you want, or if you want to let the user, keep theirs or whatever, you could just comment this out, or just don't add a JPEG up there. I think that's what the README instructions say. All right, so let's talk about going through the script line by line and what that looks like. And you can do this with both the cloud to cloud migration, or in this case, the domain to cloud, because I know that's what everyone is more excited about testing. So let me tell you a little bit about what I have here. I have a PC that is joined to my local domain, and I will show you the dsreg command status. You can see we are just domain joined, right? My local tenant. And the only other real thing I have here to test are in my C drive. I have my PS tools, which I'll need to run the application, and I have the folder, and this is the exact folder that, same thing I would use to package for an Intune Win. You see, even the Intune Win is here. So as long as I have all my files here, I can actually test it as if I were doing this through Intune or whatever tool you're going to deploy this through. So what we're going to do to basically make this happen is we're going to start by launching command as an administrator. Now that we've launched that as an administrator, we're actually going to open another command. We're going to open PowerShell ICE, but to do that, we're going to do that with PS tools. So PS tools, PS exec, I -s, and I'm going to type PowerShell ice. And this is going to allow PowerShell to run as the system context. So I'll blow this up and we'll take a look at it once everything is loaded. We don't need that. Let's make the text a little bigger for everybody. And I'm going to first say, who am I? And that's how you can see we're running a system. And I'm going to just navigate over to my path, right? I call it V7. So now that we're in here, I'm going to open it up. Don't worry about that pop-up because you're in system. And we are going to we're going to start with start migrate. It's really all we have to run here. So the best thing you can do to start is in the beginning, there are a bunch of functions that just have to be recorded. So I'm actually going to highlight the entire first part. I'm going to say lines, basically the beginning all the way to lines 136. And I'm going to click the run selection. Right, so now all the functions have been loaded in. All right, first thing I'm going to do is import my config JSON, which I'm getting from the root. And let's check it to see if we actually got it. So I'm going to call config. And you can see those are all my settings, right? Everything here I have. And you would just make sure that looks right against your JSON settings. Perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is start my transcript, my log, making the directory, and my install tag. And I could also grab this. So I would say the start transcript to check context sections. And we can take a look at what's going on here. We can see, yep. Oh, okay, I should have done that first. That's okay. So if we look, what we have here, we have running as NT Authority system. We created the install file. We created the Intune migration and program data. So you can see the log in real time, essentially, which is very helpful. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we're going to go down. So our next section is going to be copying the package files to the local machine. Okay. And we're going to run that. And it says it was done successful, but of course we're going to manually check. So I'm going to go to C, program data, and you can see I now have an Intune migration folder and everything is local. So that's perfect. So this next part here checks if there's a source tenant, and if there is, authenticates to it. So we're going to go ahead and run that. And it looks like it authenticated to Steve capacity. And we can check because we can call our source headers. And you can see we have a value there. The next part does the same thing with the target tenant. Okay. Perfect. Authenticated to Rubik's Dev target tenant successfully. So I should be able to call target headers and get the same result. Okay. The next part is going to check that registry value. We can run that by itself. Nope, looks like came back good. If we wanted to, we could check it in the registry. I'm not going to because I know it's right, but obviously you can stop there and check. That's the whole point of this. We're just stopping and checking and make sure everything here works before it's this giant domino effect. The next part, the device object building. So we're going to run that whole thing. And at the end of this, we should be able to get all our current device values written to the registry. So I'm going to run that selection. Okay, got a bunch of stuff here. So first I'm going to call my device, and I think we call that let's see here. What is our name for it? It's just PC. So I'm going to call PC. And you can see all the values I got. There's no autopilot ID, there's no Intune ID, there's no enter ID because I'm just domain joined, which is yes. Azure ID join, no. There is no group tag. I got the serial number. MDM is false. I'm not enrolled in Intune, so that's perfect. Now, if I do want to check the registry for this, local machine, software, you see Intune migration, and there's all my values now. So if the values were not null, they get written here. So that's perfect. That's everything I need. All right, moving on to the user part, we're going to get all the current user info, and this is the same flow as the PC. So it should get the values, and we should be able to see them. So I'm going to run that as well. Let's go ahead and call the current user. All right, look at that. So it was able to grab the current user profile path, the SAM name. There is no UPN because what we use for UPN lookup doesn't come back in domain join, and we get the current SID. Now, as far as the registry goes, we can refresh this, and we're also going to see those values: old SAM name, old SID, old username. So everything is under the old. That's how we're distinguishing between tenant A and B. It's old and new. I couldn't come up with anything better. So now that we have that, this is kind of the new section. So the first thing we're going to do is determine if we're looking in the source or target tenant, whether this is cloud to cloud or domain to cloud. So I'm going to run this, and it has target headers. So that means my new headers in this section are the target headers. Let's see if we can grab the UPN. So we'll start with full UPN. Now nothing comes back because we don't have current user.upn, but I just want to show you as a quick example what would happen there. So if I say current UPN equals Rick Jones at stevecapacity.com. And I wanted to switch this to full UPN equals current UPN. Because when you're doing cloud to cloud, you are going to have. So let me look up the full UPN. So just want to show you what I did here with this user lookup line. So I'm going to run these lines. And if I want to call user lookup, now we have the rick.jones at, and that's going to help us do the lookup like I mentioned before without finding an array of names. So I'm going to put this back because it doesn't really matter right now, but it is helpful for cloud to cloud. Okay, so because that's not going to be an issue, we're going to go all the way down here, and we're going to look in the else section, and we're going to run this manually. So the first thing we're going to do is install the modules. So we're going to run that selection. NuGet's already installed. AZ Accounts is not installed, and it's going to go ahead and install that for me. All right, so that's installed successfully. What we're going to do now is go through and run the part that's going to set the task, right? So as soon as we set the task, it's going to run. So let's go ahead and grab this whole thing here, and I'll talk you through exactly what happens. So it went ahead and set the task. Let's see if I can show you the task. So we can see the task here. User Finder is running. So you can see I'm being asked to sign in. So I'm going to sign in with my new credentials, rickjones@rubixdev.com. Now notice while it's doing that, it's polling every 5 seconds, not present, waiting for the user, not present. So it's just going to wait until it finds this. And I'm giving it about 5 minutes. So we're going to sign in. Okay, and I can close the window. Okay. And once that's done, you can see that part finishes. So let me explain what happened. Once that part of the script was done, if we go to C users, public documents, did I do documents? Oh, I removed it actually. Sorry, my bad. We're supposed to remove it. So what happened is it went ahead and made a file, and it wrote it to C users public documents. And at that point, because it found it, we went ahead and imported that. So that gave us our new user info. So you see if I do new user, it gave us all the information. So it gave us the new UPN, the new entry user ID, and more importantly, the new SID. So that got stored locally. We pulled it in, and then we get rid of that file so that it's not lingering on the computer. So it's just like a temporary way to adjust it. So now, and if I go to the registry, and I'm going to refresh one more time, you can see I have my new values as well. All right, so that took care of the user section. In the next piece, it's going to check if, basically, if we were MDM enrolled, it's going to go find the cert and the registry value for that, and it's going to remove all of that. We're not enrolled in NDM. This part sets our tasks, so we can run that. We can give that a quick check here. Refresh. Yep, we can see we have post, migrate, and reboot. So the tasks are set. If the PC is Azure AD joined, it'll unjoin it, but it should not be. So you can see it's not Azure AD joined. Now we're going to do the hybrid leave. So what's going to happen is we're going to get a new admin set up on the machine with a random password that we don't know and no one will know, which is great. And we're going to check for line of sight to the domain. If we have line of sight, we're going to break it by changing the DNS. And then at that point, we're going to, one of the big changes we made, and shout out to our Discord community for helping us with this, is to make sure we can unjoin the machine. Instead of the actual unjoin PowerShell command, we are invoking the sim method here with the parameters of the new admin and password. So I'm going to run this whole bit right here, and then we'll talk about it after. Okay, Rubik's Dev has no line of sight to the domain controller. Checking migration in progress. Migration in progress already enabled. Okay, so we have a admin user that was created successfully unjoined. So successfully unjoined means, oh, let's open up a command as the user. Yep, we're not domain joined anymore. And that should be visible from the settings. When I go to accounts, access work school, there's nothing here. Okay, great. So of course, the final part, this is the SCCM section. I don't know if anyone used that yet, but that will remove SCCM if we wanted to. Finally, the provisioning package. It's going to check if the package installs. If it's going to check if the package is present, and if it is, it's going to install it. And it looks like it found, and it's installing. And once that's finished, we're going to see some output based on that, on the different sections. Ooh, we're going to be signed out in a minute. So we only have a minute for the rest of the script to finish. But it looks like everything was successful. It provisioned us to the new tenant, and we're going to take a look at that in a moment. And we don't need to run this because this would delete the Intune and Autopilot objects if they existed. And we do have to set the rest real quick. Okay, so the rest is going to take care of our lock screen settings. It's going to take care of our, this way we got that nice notice, setting the caption to, you know, we're migrating you, all that stuff. We're setting it to auto log in to a user that doesn't exist so users can't log in. That's pretty much it. So now everything else should run because we've set the tasks and we should be good to go. And then what we'll do is after this is done, we'll go kind of look around and see what happened and make sure the reboot and everything else worked correctly. So we're just going to sit and wait. Okay, so great. We're getting the device migration is in progress lock screen. If I hit OK, I can't log in because this is not a real, this is an account, but it doesn't have a real password and it's disabled anyway. So it's just can't log in there. So we're just going to wait the 30 seconds it takes to reboot. There we go. And that should put us in Rubik's Dev Cloud only. Welcome to Rubik's Dev. Log in with your new email address. You can edit that so it doesn't say new. That might throw people off. So we're going to type in the full thing, rubiksdev.com. And it should not create a new user here because we're using the same profile we already have. We just switched the owner. So it should just let me write in because, you know, everything Rick Jones had before should be the same, even though we went from domain to cloud. Cool. And the new feature we added to set the wallpaper looks like it worked great. And like I said, that's optional, but it's a nice touch. And I do want to show you here a few things. Let's go to settings. So you can see now it's Rick Jones at rubiksdev.com. If I go to accounts, yep, it's connected to Entra ID. And I will show you here. DSReg command status. A lot of good things here. Got a primary refresh token. We have the short and the full UPN. And we are Azure AD joined, not domain joined. And of course, the more important thing is when we go to see users, there's only one Rick Jones. That's my built-in account, but that's it. I feel like I say this every time I talk about little changes here, but thank you for the community for testing this. I know it's definitely, for me, it's the most frustrating thing to test because you got to keep putting the device back in a source state and run it again. But I think what's good is for the folks, definitely go grab 7.2. It's available now. And for the folks that are having issues, it seems tedious, but go through the process I showed where it's line by line running a system. And that way you can see, because if one thing is wrong or maybe you can't find something before you constantly run it blind and looking at the logs after, it can definitely make a big difference doing it this way. So let me know your thoughts on this. Continue to let me know how you're doing and provide logs. It's super helpful, and we'll be seeing you.